Now, Kit touched on Mr. Richard Goodall's special performance. It's important to note just how much of an impact his impressive vocals have made around the world.
Just a small town girl. Living in a lonely world. What? She took the midnight train going anywhere.
A small-town janitor, hidden in plain sight for over 20 years, suddenly steps onto one of the biggest stages in the world and leaves everyone speechless. How did a man cleaning school hallways end up receiving the golden buzzer? What personal tragedy drove him to sing his heart out in front of millions? Richard Goodall, the singing janitor. In the quiet town of Terre Haute, Indiana, mornings begin with the gentle sound of a broom sweeping across the floor, echoing through empty school hallways. For over 2 decades, this routine has been the same for Richard Goodall, a janitor who has walked these corridors with the same steady pace and the same dedication to his work. But what most people didn't realize until recently was that this quiet, humble man had a voice that could captivate millions. Richard wasn't just a janitor, he was the singing janitor, though few knew how deep his love for music truly ran. His story isn't one of instant fame, but of a passion that slowly simmered beneath the surface for years, just waiting for the right moment to shine. As a young boy, Richard found solace in music. In the living room of his family's modest home, he'd sit in front of his Radio Shack stereo, listening intently to the tunes of the 70s and 80s. Rock bands of the era transported him to another world, but it was Journey that truly captured his heart. Steve Perry's soaring voice became Richard's beacon, a guiding light that showed him the power of music to move people. But for Richard, music wasn't a path he would immediately pursue. He didn't have formal vocal training, nor did he dream of becoming a star. After high school, while many of his classmates chased their ambitions in far-off cities, Richard chose a quieter, steadier route. He took a job as a janitor with the Vigo County School Corporation, a position he would hold for over 20 years. Every morning, Richard would arrive at the school before the first bell rang, ensuring that the halls were spotless, the classrooms tidy, and the floors gleaming. He worked in the background, a figure familiar to the students and staff, yet often overlooked. But what they didn't see was the fire that still burned inside him, the love for music that he kept alive in the quiet moments of his day. And it was within the walls of that very school where Richard's talent would begin to emerge, though in the most unexpected of ways. Each year, the school held talent shows and events, and Richard was always a fixture on these occasions. While many might have expected the janitor to simply sweep up after the festivities, Richard had something else in mind. At the 5th grade graduation ceremony, year after year, Richard would step onto the stage, microphone in hand, and sing his heart out. His voice, powerful and soulful, left both students and parents in awe. For many of the children, this performance became a highlight of their final days in elementary school. And for Richard, it was a small way to share his passion with the community he had come to love. Despite his incredible voice, Richard remained largely unknown outside the school. His performances were cherished by those who witnessed them, but he never sought the spotlight. He was content with his role and proud of the work he did every day. But deep down, there was still a dream that perhaps one day his voice might reach a wider audience. But how did Richard Goodall's childhood love for music, listening to old records, lead him to a moment of sudden fame? What happened that took him from cleaning floors to capturing the attention of millions? And how did one performance change his life overnight? Could this quiet man handle the fame he never looked for, as his voice spread around the world? A life-changing audition. That day came sooner than he ever expected. After years of encouraging whispers from students and faculty alike, Richard finally decided to take a leap of faith. He gathered his courage and auditioned for America's Got Talent, a decision that would change the course of his life forever. Stepping onto the stage, his heart pounded in his chest. The bright lights, the cameras, and the judges, all of it was a world away from the quiet school hallways he had known for so long. But once he began to sing, all those nerves melted away. Richard chose a song close to his heart, Journey's Don't Stop Believin', and as his voice filled the theater, the audience was stunned. There, in front of millions of viewers, the singing janitor finally had his moment. As the music started, Richard's nerves melted away. His voice, rich and soulful, filled the room. The judges were visibly moved, and the audience watched in awe as he effortlessly hit every note. But what happened next was beyond anything Richard had ever imagined. When the last note faded, the audience erupted into applause. And then, to his shock, one of the judges reached for the golden buzzer. Confetti rained down as the sound of the buzzer filled the theater. Richard stood there, overwhelmed, tears welling up in his eyes. This was the moment he had waited for his entire life. The moment that would catapult him into the spotlight. It was the kind of moment that changed everything. A life-defining audition. Richard Goodall, the singing janitor from Terre Haute, stepped onto the stage of America's Got Talent and poured his heart out for the world to see. The lights were bright, the judges sat with critical eyes, and the audience waited in anticipation. But Richard wasn't focused on any of that. For him, this was his chance, the moment he had quietly dreamed about for decades. The Terre Haute community had always known Richard's kind heart and incredible voice, but now the world was getting a glimpse of what made him so special. Determined to support him on this incredible journey, his friends, neighbors, and local businesses came together in an extraordinary show of solidarity. Fundraisers were organized, donations poured in, and the entire town worked to ensure that Richard had everything he needed to make his dream of competing on AGT a reality. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the belief they had in him, the recognition of how much he had given to their community over the years. For Richard, this support meant everything. He had spent over 2 decades quietly working behind the scenes, ensuring that the schools in his community were well kept, all the while sharing his voice with those lucky enough to hear it. Now that same community was giving back, showing him that his talent and kindness had not gone unnoticed. But Richard's journey didn't stop there. His audition went viral, spreading across social media like wildfire. People from all corners of the globe were sharing clips of the singing janitor, marveling at how someone so unassuming could possess such an extraordinary talent. For Richard, it was overwhelming. He had never sought fame or fortune. He simply loved to sing. Yet here he was, with millions of fans cheering him on, many of them commenting on how his story was a reminder that it's never too late to chase your dreams. Richard's sudden rise to fame brought with it a whirlwind of attention. Interviews, television appearances, and even offers to perform at larger venues began pouring in. Through it all, Richard remained the same humble man he had always been. Despite the newfound recognition, he never forgot where he came from, or the students who had believed in him from the start. In fact, one of the first things he did after his audition aired was to return to the school and sing for the children once again. This time, though, it was different. The kids looked at him not just as their janitor, but as a hometown hero. While many would have been tempted to leave their old life behind after such an experience, Richard stayed grounded. He continued his work at the school, sweeping the halls and greeting the students with a smile each morning. Fame for Richard wasn't about leaving behind the life he had built. It was about showing others, especially the children he worked with, that anything is possible if you follow your passion. For over 2 decades, Richard quietly nurtured his love for music, sharing it with those around him in small, meaningful ways. And when the moment came for him to share it with the world, he embraced it with grace and humility. Now, as he continues to balance his work as a janitor with his growing music career, Richard serves as an inspiration to millions. His journey is a testament to the power of persistence and the belief that sometimes the biggest stars are the ones who shine the brightest from the most unexpected places. But behind Richard Goodall's incredible voice lies a story of heartache. How did a personal tragedy, the loss of a loved one, inspire him to pour his pain into music? Could the song he sang in their memory be the key to healing, and the moment that truly connected him with audiences around the world? As his voice moved millions, was it his way of overcoming grief and finding hope again? Overcoming personal tragedy. In August, when Richard Goodall returned to the America's Got Talent stage for the quarterfinals, there was something different in the air. This time, his performance wasn't just about impressing the judges or wowing the audience. It carried a deeply personal weight, one that resonated not only with Richard, but with everyone who had been following his journey. For this performance, Richard chose Michael Bolton's emotional ballad, "How Am I Supposed to Live Without You?", a song that meant far more than the audience or judges could initially grasp. As Richard stepped onto the stage, his fiancée, Angie Vanovan, sat in the audience, beaming with pride. This was a significant moment for her too. Angie had been Richard's rock, supporting him through the most difficult chapter of his life, a chapter marked by loss, grief, and the overwhelming pain of saying goodbye to someone he loved dearly. Just a year earlier, in June of 2021, Richard's wife of 29 years had passed away after a long and painful battle with cancer. That loss had shaken Richard to his core, leaving him devastated and unsure of how to move forward. The woman he had shared his life with for nearly 3 decades was gone, and the future felt uncertain and empty. But somehow, through the darkness, Richard found a way to keep going. Music became his outlet, his therapy, his way of processing the unimaginable pain he felt. And Angie was there every step of the way, giving him the strength to continue pursuing his passion, even when it seemed impossible. By the time Richard took the stage for that quarterfinal performance, the two of them had found love again, a testament to Richard's resilience and the unbreakable human spirit. As the first notes of the song played, the atmosphere in the theater shifted. Richard's voice, raw with emotion, filled the room. He wasn't just singing a song, he was telling a story. His story. Every word of the song seemed to echo the pain, love, and heartbreak he had experienced over the past year. The audience could feel it too. This performance wasn't about hitting the perfect notes or delivering a flawless vocal run. It was about something far deeper. It was about honoring the love he had lost and the love he had found again. It was about facing life's toughest challenges and somehow finding the courage to keep moving forward. The reactions from judges were a treat to watch. Sofia Vergara had a beautiful take. Moved by the dedication to Angie, she remarked on how special it must have been for her to hear Richard sing that song with such emotion. She could see the deep connection between them, and the fact that Richard had found love again after such a devastating loss was something truly beautiful. Simon Cowell acknowledged Richard as one of the most memorable contestants the show had seen in a long time. He praised Richard for his dedication and authenticity, but he wasn't entirely sold on the song choice. To Simon, "How Am I Supposed to Live Without You" felt too old-fashioned for the competition. However, Simon's critique didn't take away from the emotional depth of the performance. It was clear that Richard wasn't performing to win points with the judges. He was performing for himself, for Angie, and for the memory of his late wife. For Richard, this performance was about so much more than impressing the judges or advancing to the next round. It was a moment of healing, a chance to channel his grief and love into something meaningful. In many ways, it was a tribute, not just to his late wife, but to everyone who had stood by him during the hardest time of his life. Angie had been there for him when he needed it most. And now, she was in the audience, watching him shine on one of the biggest stages in the world. The loss of his wife had marked a painful chapter in Richard's life, but it didn't define him. Instead, Richard found the strength to keep going, to keep singing, and to keep living, even when it felt impossible. His journey wasn't just about overcoming personal tragedy. It was about rediscovering joy and purpose, about finding love again, and about using music as a way to heal. For Richard, every performance was a chance to share a piece of his story, and in doing so, he touched the hearts of millions. As the confetti from his earlier golden buzzer moment had settled, Richard's story continued to unfold in ways that no one could have predicted. His ability to channel his personal struggles into his music was what made him stand out, not just as a singer, but as a human being. His voice wasn't just technically impressive, it was emotionally resonant. Audiences connected with him because they could feel the truth in every word he sang. They saw a man who had been through the darkest days of his life and had come out on the other side, not broken, but stronger. It's a very straightforward, practical example that life is filled with both unimaginable losses and unexpected blessings. It was also a testament to the power of love, both the love he had lost and the love he had found again. Through all the heartache, Richard had Angie by his side, and together they were building a new chapter, one that was filled with hope and music. By the end of his performance, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Richard had done more than just sing a song. He had shared a piece of his soul. His journey on America's Got Talent was no longer just about showcasing his vocal talent. It had become a story of love, of finding light in the darkest of times, and of the power of music to heal even the deepest wounds. How did years of dedication and quiet perseverance shape the man behind the microphone? What challenges did he face along the way? And how did he continue to move forward, even when no one was watching? an inspiring journey of resilience. Richard Goodall's journey is one of those rare stories that leave a lasting mark on everyone who hears it. It's not often that someone like Richard, a man who spent over 2 decades cleaning the halls of local schools, finds himself standing in the spotlight. But that's exactly what makes his story so powerful. It reminds us that talent can emerge from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes all it takes is a moment of courage to show the world who you really are. For years, Richard was known as the singing janitor, a man whose incredible voice would occasionally fill the school auditoriums during talent shows or graduation ceremonies. But outside of those walls, few knew of his musical gifts. He never pursued a career in music, nor did he chase fame. Instead, he chose a path of stability and service, dedicating his life to his job and the community he cared so deeply about. But music had always been his true passion, and eventually, that passion would push him to take a chance on something bigger. When Richard decided to audition for America's Got Talent, it wasn't just about chasing a dream. It was about proving to himself and to others that no matter where you come from or what you do, your talent and passion can take you anywhere. And when he stepped onto that stage and sang with the voice that had been hidden for so long, he captured the hearts of not only the judges, but millions of people around the country. What makes Richard's story even more inspiring is how it defies the stereotypes we often hold about success. Society tends to place people in boxes, thinking that talent is reserved for those who chase it relentlessly, or that stardom is only for the young, glamorous, and well-connected. Richard's story breaks through those preconceived notions. Here was a man who had quietly worked as a janitor for over 20 years, living an ordinary life, only to emerge as one of the most beloved contestants on one of the biggest talent shows in the world. He showed us that greatness doesn't always come from where we expect it. Sometimes, it's hidden in the everyday people we pass by without a second thought. And there you have it, the incredible, heart-wrenching journey of Richard Goodall, the singing janitor who turned tragedy into triumph and wowed the world with his voice. From the quiet hallways of a school to the America's Got Talent stage, his story is proof that no dream is too big and no path is too unlikely. But what's next for Richard? Could this just be the beginning of something even greater? Stay tuned, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to like this video if Richard's story moved you as much as it did us. See you in the next one.